ra nước, hột vịt lộn, hột vịt sữa, trứng cút lộn, bắt xào đây.
Welcome to a special bonus episode of 7 Million Bikes, a Saigon podcast. I'm here today with Lars Callieou, who is a special guest because he's not actually a Saigoneer. He's a travelling comic who's visiting Saigon. He's been here many times before. I was at his show last night. He's a very, very funny man, and he's also super helpful. He's been visiting and meeting with comics like myself in Saigon, helping us, giving us advice, and it's been really, really useful. And so hopefully the Saigon comedy scene will be infinitely better after you leave.
They're good. There's some solid comics here. You know, it's not like Bangkok where all the comics are total junk.
Oh, okay.
I'm just kidding. They're not. They're all friends of mine there too. They're good guys. It's good to trash talk because it'll get back to them.
Yeah,
so
right.
It's perfect. We'll have a little controversy.
Sweet. Hopefully, someone in Bangkok listens to this podcast.
They're good.
That would be awesome.
It's a fun club there.
So Lars is from Canada. He's from Edmonton.
Yeah.
And how many times have you been to Saigon now?
This is the 4th year in a row.
Wow. Nice. So you'll have noticed. Everyone I speak to has been here for several years now. I end up saying the same thing. You must have seen such a change because things are changing here so quick, right?
I'm going to go back and listen to the library of podcasts so I can hear some of the differences. So it's been a part of the tour. So I do Australia and Asia every March, April, May, and it's just a part of the tour now, which is great. But I mean, the food is so great and everything is so cheap, and the crowds are lovely. So it's, you know, people who perform here and are familiar with the city, they realize how cheap and how good the food is. And so, I mean, I love it. I look forward to coming every year. And yeah.
Do you I think of you as like a rock and roll star or a music band, you know, and they travel the world. You often read, when you read a biography or whatever, they don't get to see the city.
Right.
Because they come in, they play a gig, and then they leave. Is it similar for you, or do you get to enjoy the places you visit? So
the first year I came, I was with the Melbourne Comedy Festival, and we were here for 5 days, and they put us up at the Caravel Saigon. It's like a 6-star hotel, and like borderline 6 stars. It was unbelievable. And the first year when we did the 6 days here, it was great because you got to unpack, you got to do some laundry, it was really great. So the following year I did Hanoi, and I also did Phuket in Thailand, and it was literally hotel, venue, airport, venue, hotel. I didn't see any of Hanoi, and I didn't see any of Phuket. I might as well have been performing in Calgary, Canada. I landed at the airport, they took us to the hotel, showered, went and did the show, went back to the hotel, got up the next morning at 6 a.m. and went back. So people are like, oh, you've been to Hanoi? Well, kinda.
To the airport?
Yeah, I've been to the airport and the hotel. That's all. And so I was excited to go to Hanoi because I'd never been, but I mean, I was there for 16 hours.
Yeah, you can't even really say you've been to Hanoi.
That's right. And the show was great. They have a really cool comedy club up there. I don't know if you've been, but it's called Stand Up Hanoi, and it's awesome. It's so great. And then this year we spent a day and a half in, and I always pronounce it wrong, Hue?
I'll probably say it wrong as well. Yeah, I just say Hue.
Yeah,
I've had a friend call it Hugh.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, who's Hugh? And he's like, no, the Imperial City. I was like, oh, you mean Hue?
Yeah. And so which is by Da Nang, for anybody who's listening to this who might not know. It's kind of central Vietnam. And so same thing, but we got to see a little bit of it, and we went and had their lemongrass skewers and this like a pancake, and so we went and had some local cuisine. It was really great. And so, yeah, you're right. It is a little bit like, you know, you've been to all these cities, but you haven't really been to all these cities. Yeah, it's like you've set foot in the airport and you have a magnet on your fridge from it, but that's it.
Which you bought at the airport.
Yeah, precisely.
So how did you get into comedy then?
I couldn't play a guitar.
I can't play a guitar either. I tried.
Yeah, my family were all musicians, and so I thought I really grew up thinking I grew up on stage, and I thought I was going to be a musician, and I just couldn't play. I was terrible, brutal, like embarrassingly bad. Couldn't carry a tune in a bucket, and so I tried stand-up when I was 26 years old, and 16 years later, here it is. Yeah.
And when you started, did you want to have a career in comedy, or was it a hobby? Or
I didn't think you could have a career in comedy. There was no part of me that thought that was an actual job. There's to this day, and I'm over 10 years into doing this as a job, I still don't think it's a job. And for the listeners, like, really, you can get paid doing that? Like, yeah, you can do well. I mean, I'm very, very lucky, but I just wanted to be good at it. And I was 1 year into comedy. A girl broke my heart. And so I just focused on comedy for 3 years to try and get past the heartbreak. And 3 years later, I was like a comedian.
And at what point did you feel like, I'm a comedian?
It still hasn't happened. As silly as that sounds, I just don't, like, a decade of my life, it's been my job. I don't make money any other way other than through comedy. I've done a little bit of acting, but I'm also terrible at that. And so, I don't think that there's a time now, like when I watch somebody there's a comedian from Australia named Jacques Barrett. And Jacques Barrett is one of the greatest writers I've ever seen. He is, you watch him and you're like, this guy's unbelievable. Mick Nevin, who's also Australian. And so you watch these comedians and you're like, I've Fiona O'Loughlin, I think, was also another. I hope I got her name right. But anyway, so you watch them and you're like, that's a comedian. That's a comedian. And so I still don't feel like, I feel like I'm a pretender.
Well, there is something called the imposter syndrome. Have you heard of that?
No, that's how it feels.
Yeah, and apparently everyone feels it. It's like you can be a CEO of a company.
Yeah.
But you might feel like, I'm not worthy of this position, or and if someone, because I felt like that in a job I had in the past, and I was talking to my manager about it. It was like my first kind of management job. And he's like, how are you doing? I was like, yeah, good. And he's like, how are you feeling? I was like, I don't really know if I know I'm doing the right thing. I don't know if, like,
Yeah.
And he's like, that's fine. He's like, everyone feels like that. It's the imposter syndrome. Like, you'll get past it, maybe.
Yeah. But I mean, when you watch somebody Jim Jeffries, Bill Burr, Maria Bamford, you watch them and they're doing it on another level, and they're the greatest in the world.
Yeah.
So it's those sounds you're hearing in the background. This is a live taping of 7 Million Bikes.
Yeah, this is a bit of a bonus episode, so we're doing this in the restaurant of Lars's hotel. He's flying back to Edmonton tonight.
Yeah.
So this is pretty good opportunity. So what is what's the normal reaction when you tell somebody you're a comedian? You're at a party and someone's like, oh, so what do you do for work?
Well, I have a game that I play. So if I'm on a flight next to somebody, I want to see how long I can talk about their job before they ask me about mine. And I won't be dismissive, but I will try and deflect just a little. No, what do you do? And I remember there was a guy who was a textile purchaser for Mountain Equipment Co-op. It's kind of like North Face in Canada. So it was like, like outdoor wear. And we talked for 4 hours about his textile purchasing, and plane was about to land, and he goes, what do you do? I said, I'm a stand-up comedian. And he's like, what? Why were we talking about textiles for 4 hours? And as soon as the conversation, as soon as they find out, and there are comedians, Jimmy Dore, this really funny comedian from Chicago, but he lives in LA, he said, if you don't want to have that conversation, he tells people, I speak at colleges. So if you don't want people to know, you don't say anything. It's so if you say I'm a comedian, then it's going to be, tell me a joke, or are you famous, or what have you been on, and so if you don't want to open the door to that, I'm okay with having the conversation, because I love this job. I love the craft. I love stand-up comedy, so I'm happy to talk about it. But I want to learn a bit about the other person before, because it's just going to dominate the conversation, and I want it to. Like, I'm like, no, that's all I want to talk about. And so once you tell them, the simpletons, people who aren't overly intelligent, will ask, tell me a joke. That's and then, which is not to say everybody who asks that question is dumb, but you'll find that, and I'm not smart by any stretch of the imagination, so I'm not patronizing people. But then there's people who ask really intelligent questions, and you go, wow, that's a great question. Well, doesn't matter, So I'm happy to discuss that. But if you're doing comedy and you don't want to talk about it, then don't tell them, because it's all they're going to talk about.
And so, what's the most frustrating thing about being a comedian?
Oh man, if people knew the amount of rejection so you have to have a thick skin on stage, but you're going to apply to, as you go through your career, you're going to apply to a festival, and somebody else is going to get it. You're going to apply to a TV show and somebody else is going to get it. You're going to get passed over again and again and again and again. So the rejection is by far the most difficult part of stand-up comedy. And there's a couple of really, really funny young comics, and I see them coming up. And what I'll do is I'll send them a message and I'll say, look, you're really good at this. I've been doing this for 16 years now. You're as good as anyone I've ever seen. There will come a day when the rejection is going to start to get to you. Don't let it beat you down. And so I want them to know if you push through this, it's going to be worth it. And maybe they have a change of heart. Maybe they don't want to do it. Sometimes they have a wife and kids, and they decide that they're, there's going to be an investment banker or something and that's okay as long as I want people to be happy. But Artie Lang, who was on Mad TV and he was on the Howard Stern show for years as well, he said comedy is 51% joy, 49% misery. And I'd have to say that's pretty close. And when the shows are great, you'll do this audience, a crowd will just be spectacular. And I remember one of my friends, Alex, he said, don't you wish they could all be like this? And I said, no, because then everybody would do it. If they were all like this, that's the reward for all of the tough shows, all of the bar gigs, all of the travel, all of that. The reward are those shows. And so, yeah, I mean, the stuff on stage, people do it because they love it. Like you started in comedy because you love it, and you get on stage, and it is addicting, and it's the coolest feeling in the world when you have a joke land. And but you'll apply to all these different things, and they'll be like, oh, sorry, we didn't, so there's a few tours that I've been pitched for, and I think there was 3 years in a row. So they pick 4 comedians, and it's a national tour in Canada. And 4 years in a row, I was the last comedian cut. So I was the alternate essentially. And you're like, oh, I was so close. Or that's what they tell you. I mean, they could be making that up to make you feel better. But so stuff like that. Yeah, the rejection, man, it will beat you down, and it makes a lot of people quit.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I think, do you feel like there's a disconnect between the on-stage persona and then the real person? Because I think everyone assumes that comedians are hilarious in real life and always the life and soul of the party, but I even know some comedians here that if you meet them, they're really quiet and meek. But then you get on stage and they're like hilarious.
That's a good question. The best comedians are the ones who have a real close... Jacques Barrett, who I mentioned earlier, he's the same on stage and off stage. McNevin, same thing. There's a guy named Kelly Taylor, who is one of the best comedians I've ever seen in my life. He's from Canada, and he is the same person on stage and off. So there are people who are introverted off stage and then, very extroverted on stage. So I think there's there can be, but I mean, a lot of times maybe it's an embellishment of their personality. Or they've created a character that works for them. But I think most people are pretty close, like most professional comedians.
Interesting.
Yeah, so one of my favorite comedians in the world, if your listeners aren't familiar with Kathleen Madigan. So Kathleen Madigan's from St. Louis originally, but she's been in LA forever, ever and ever. Look up Kathleen Madigan, and she is unbelievably funny. And she's the same person on stage and off. Like, she is hysterical. And... she's amazing. So I think that it's possible that there is a disconnect, air quotes, on a podcast, but I think for the most part it's pretty, it can be pretty close. The best ones, I think, but I could be wrong about that.
What's your best memory of being a comedian, or a standout moment for you?
Oh wow, going to Iraq to entertain the troops.
I didn't think that's a sentence that I would hear.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've done the Just for Laughs Festival in Montreal, which was unbelievable. But I think, and I've done a bunch of TV tapings and I hesitate because I don't want every time I'm on a podcast or doing an interview for it to go to this, because it sounds like such a name drop. But touring with Joan Rivers, and the reason that was so surreal for me, and this is so, I don't know if you saw the movie Spaceballs.
Oh yeah, I love that movie.
So yeah. Joan Rivers was the robot. She was like the C-3PO, like that was her character.
Oh, of course, yeah, that's right.
And so
she was.
I loved Spaceballs so much, and the last 3 tours of Canada Joan Rivers had done, I was her opening act. I worked with her 5 times in total, like 5 different years, and every time, like, I'm working with the person from Spaceballs, or
Did
the
you
red
tell her
carpet.
that?
Yeah, I don't know if I ever did. That's a good question. I must have, but I never want to. I don't want to sound like I'm being, I'm a fan. And so,
but she's probably like, out of all of my body of work,
yeah, that
you like me the most with Spaceballs.
I so did. I really love that movie.
That's a great one. Yeah.
And so, when I was watching that as a kid, did I ever think that I would be working with one of the actors from Spaceballs? No, I never in a million years dreamed that. And so she was the fill-in host for Johnny Carson for many years. She was the fill-in host of The Tonight Show. And so you are working with, and she'd never cared for the title, but you were working with a legend, like a real legend. And so but yeah, I think entertaining the troops, the 3 tours I've done over there, might be my like most fond memory.
And so what's that like? So we're talking about going in and out of cities. Were you kind of like straight to the base and out, or did you see any of the country?
No, so you're on military bases. So you fly commercial into Kuwait City. There's 2 large U.S. military bases in Kuwait. And Kuwait is a very small country. There's 1 million Kuwaitis and 3 million like expats that live there. So about 4 million people in the entire country of Kuwait. And as of probably 5 or 6 years ago, so you can fact check the numbers for me if you want. But so then you take military transport from the base in Kuwait into Iraq, and so you do a show right after they have lunch on the first base, and then they fly you on a Black Hawk helicopter to the next base. There's 3 comedians. They fly you to the next base, and then you do a show right after dinner, and then you stay at that base for the night, and then you just basically, for 12 days, you just do 2 or 3 bases a day. And we did bases that were as small as 50 guys and as large as 10,000.
Wow, I was just going to say, how big were they?
Yeah, so like we did some really, really tiny ones and some really massive ones. And it was... I thought you were bringing home to them. I thought you were, helping. But really, what you're doing is, if they're not on mission, if they're not doing something, they're there for 6 months, and they get like a little break, and then they're there so it's a year. They're there, and they get 6 more months, and so you're just entertaining them to move them an hour and a half closer to home. Like they're just a little bit bored. There's the same routine day in and day out, day in and day out. So the comedians doing a comedy show for them. I'm anti-war but pro-troop. The men and women that were over there, they were genuinely trying to make the world a better place. They really were. I talked to thousands of them, and they're all family people that were just trying to right some wrongs. So I didn't feel like they were a bunch of trigger happy, I want to blow stuff up. They were family people, and they were like, no, I want to stop a rapacious dictator from murdering, whenever he feels like it. And so I really learned a lot, and gave me an appreciation for what we have in industrialized countries. And
did any of them heckle you?
Nope.
I'd be scared to respond.
No. And so they were similar to other comedy audiences in that they wouldn't want to sit in the front because they didn't want to get picked on, but they were required to carry with them at all times their automatic weapons, so an AR-15 and M16. So you have all these people standing in the back, and you're like, hey guys, move forward, the show will be better. And they're standing there with an automatic rifle saying, well, we don't want to sit in the front, we'll get picked on. And so, it was, nobody heckled because they know you came from around the world to entertain them. Yeah. And there's a comedian named Mike Birbiglia. He has it on a CD. It's a great joke. So you sign autographs and take pictures. So they send you with like a stack of posters with the comedian's pictures on it, and you autograph them for all the troops, and you give them that, and you take pictures with them. And Mike Birbiglia says, these people have been gone from America for so long, they don't know I'm not famous. And it's true, because you're genuine. Who do I make this out to? Oh my God, make it out to me. And I don't know how many of those posters would make it all the way home, but it was, as a souvenir, and it was, that was 16 years of doing stand-up. I think that was the thing I'm most proud of, and I've been really lucky. I've been like,
that's
really
cool.
lucky.
Did you have to go through like background checks and security checks
Oh,
and
yeah.
get like vetted and all like that?
You bet. Yeah, everything.
And did you feel, like you were being watched when you were there?
No.
Were you under tight control, or you were kind of like, here you are, it's the base?
Well, they really want to protect you.
Right.
So I have a video of it. I have it on a DVD. I put it all, and then I loaned my video camera to somebody. A comedian's like, hey, can I borrow your video camera? I loaned it to him and never got it back, and I don't know who I loaned it to. But anyway, so they pick you up at the airport in Kuwait, and they had 3 bulletproof suburban SUVs, and they drove at like 100 miles an hour to the base. And these guys, they protect you, and so you don't feel like you're being watched, as in they're worried you might do something. They want to make sure you get home safe. So it was, they say, this is, if you hear the alarm, here's what you do: get into one of the bomb shelters, and we got you, and so you feel as safe as you ever would.
Well, I was going to say, were you worried about like bombs or from other people attacking? Was that scary at all? No.
Every base we were on had been shelled. Usually it's a mortar shell.
Right.
None. So there was one base that was shelled the day after we left, but every single base we were on had mortar fire at one point or another.
But you didn't experience
we didn't know.
Right.
And so Olivia, a good friend, a very funny comedian from Houston, and the one who took me over there, sent me to the 3 times I did the tours. She was actually at a base when it got hit, or the rocket. Yeah, and so. The commanding officer of the base sits you down, tells you, here's what, you hear an alarm or you hear the siren, get into a bomb shelter, it's probably not going to hit anything, but, so they brief you and let you know what to do. So you feel as safe as you can.
You were saying earlier you never thought you would have a career in comedy. You would never imagine that it would take you to places like that,
No.
right?
Flying around on a Black Hawk helicopter? Are you kidding me?
It's pretty awesome.
It's
right?
unbelievable.
So how many countries, do you know how many countries you've visited?
Malaysia was my 23rd country, so I just did KL. So I had done 22 countries, and Malaysia was my 23rd.
Nice. And do you have a favourite? I know you maybe don't get to see so much of them. Do you have a favourite country?
I like them all.
Yeah.
I really do. When I wake up in Vietnam, and this is going to sound cheesy, so I'm 42, and I really loved the movie Good Morning Vietnam with Robin Williams, and I actually had a radio show. It still exists. It's called Comic Genius, and Genius is with a J, so Comic Genius in Canada, in Edmonton. And I got that radio show because of Adrian Cronauer, who was the character that Robin Williams played on Good Morning America. I remember being 12. Good, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Good Morning Vietnam. So I loved how fun he made radio look. And I think I would have been 13 or 14 years old, maybe a little younger. And I'm like, I want a radio show. And the idea that now you're in Vietnam, and not only that, but to go up by Da Nang, to go to Hanoi, to go to, it's surreal. And to see the reunification palace, and to watch all so I can't believe that this job has taken me to the places it's taken me.
Yeah.
There's no part of this where I think that's normal. Oh yeah, that's normal. Yeah, it's unbelievable. So I really love New York City. I really love Canada. I really love Australia. If I had to pick the 3 places I would move, so I would go. I think I can do 4. New York City would be number 1. Melbourne, Australia would be number 2. Seattle would be number 3, and Las Vegas would be number 4. Yeah, Vegas is really. It's really become, they've got a whole bunch of new comedy clubs that have opened up, and it's really a boom, and housing is cheap, and you're right in the middle of everything, and it's easy to get around, and so I quite like Las Vegas for the convenience, as silly as that sounds. Yeah,
I've never been there. I'm not a gambler, but I do want to go. It's just for the experience.
Oh, you're going to love it. And so if you go, make sure you're there on a Friday night, and we'll get you a spot on a show called The Dirty at 12:30.
Right.
So there's a show at South Point. It's a casino quite far from the Strip. It was originally started by Ralphie May, and it is unbelievable. This guy named Gabe runs it now. It is so awesome. 400 or 500 people every Friday night at 12:30 at night. You got it.
Rowdy, I would imagine. Then.
Oh, it's so good, but they're just into it. They're just a well-behaved comedy audience.
Oh,
it's
cool.
unbelievable. Yeah, we'll definitely reach out to them and do a spot there. Like, and if any of the listeners are going to Vegas, if you're there on a Friday night, go to the Dirty at 12:30. You will be glad you did. And I don't think there's an admission. I think it's free.
Wow,
yeah,
that's pretty good. Going to Vegas then this weekend?
Yeah.
From you first came to Vietnam 4 years ago, you
Yep.
said 4 years ago, and did you get to see much of Vietnam then, or was that one of the in and out visits?
No, so that was we were here for I think 5 or 6 days the first time. 5 days, and I always do bus tours wherever I go. So as soon as I get into the city, I hop on a tourist bus, and I get to see the whole city, and I'll see places I want to go visit. And we did the War Museum, we did the Palace. So I've done all that touristy stuff, and I love it.
Yeah.
I really like to learn the history and to be in places where some real stuff happened. Like there's history, and I've always enjoyed history, and I've always enjoyed learning, and so.
The War Museum is really good. It's such an eye-opener, right? And here in Saigon, you see it from the other perspective, right?
Yeah.
Like we were talking, me and Jay were talking when he was on about, he was saying the Americans just haven't disconnected Vietnam with the war. They just think of Vietnam, they think of the Vietnam War, right?
Yeah.
But it's not like that at all when you come here.
Yeah.
But then you go to the War Museum and you're like, oh, there's like a whole other perspective to this that we haven't been kind of privy to.
There's I want to make sure I get his last name right. There's a comedian named Paul. Oh, what's his last name? And he had so we're at the War Museum. Paul Morrissey, and he goes. Paul Morrissey, he's great. He's very funny. So he's from Chicago, and this guy came up to him at the War Museum, and he was asking for money. He was panhandling, and he had a crutch and one arm and one leg, and he comes up and he goes to Paul, "Where are you from?" And Paul, who's from Chicago, goes, "Canada. I'm from Canada."
Oh, really? Wow. That's insane, right?
He said it so fast. "Canada. I'm from Canada."
Because what just really opened up my mind was it was probably the first time in my life that you're like, oh, there's two versions of history, right? Or more.
Yeah.
Like we only learn one side of it, and we just think that's the way it is. And then I went to the War Museum, and you read, just won't get into it all now, but you get the Vietnamese viewpoint, and you're like, oh, this is completely different, and it's not wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe the version we got taught isn't wrong either.
Yeah.
But there's somewhere in the middle is the truth, right?
Yeah.
So what were your first impressions of Saigon when you got there?
Well, I was at the Caravel Saigon, so this was unbelievable. And not only that, but that particular hotel was where all the media stayed until the evacuation, and so there was I don't think I've ever stayed in a hotel that's borderline 6-star, and so I was like, the breakfast buffet is off the charts. It was unbelievable.
I would hope so.
So yeah, we felt really spoiled. The shows were good,
Yeah.
the tours were awesome. So I was, the first time, I think, crossing the street was somebody had mentioned before, if you want to cross the street in Vietnam, you just start walking and you just can maintain your pace. Yeah. And if you're like, no, that's not a thing. And you're like, yeah, it is.
You can't take a step back, you can't pause, you can't hesitate. As a driver, I hate it when I see a tourist crossing the road and then they start moving back, and I'm like, I don't know, you just need to walk.
Yeah.
Because I know if you walk, I'll go around you, but if you start going back and forward, you're going to get hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly how it works.
Yeah, you just step off the curb in front of thousands and thousands of vehicles, and you just maintain your pace, and they all avoid you.
Yeah. I don't know how, but it works. I know.
It's scary.
And I tell a joke, one of my jokes, and again, most of my jokes are kind of true stories. My first time in Hanoi, we'd been with my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law, and they'd been living here for a couple of years. They still live here. And so they were basically our guides and helping us cross the road and things like that. And then they'd gone back to Ho Chi Minh City, and we were still in Hanoi for another couple of nights. First time, it's rush hour. My wife and I were like, how do we cross this road? And we're like on the curb, like you see every other tourist, like just trying to figure this out. And the next minute, I swear to God, this is absolutely true, I feel a hand in my back and a little Vietnamese man just pushing me out, smiling and laughing into the traffic, and basically pushes me across the road. I'm like, what is going on here? We get across the road and it's fine. And yeah, now I've lived here for 3 years. It's just I'm on the opposite side now, just like stroll across.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's surreal. So that, if people have never seen it or done it, it's insanity. It's insanity.
I've seen a couple have an argument trying to cross the road, like because they just couldn't figure it out, and she ended up like throwing his hand down and storming off. And yeah, it's definitely, I think, probably one of the craziest things here. So what we're going to do, I finish every episode with the same set of questions, so I'm going to ask these questions to you. Alright, and we'll see, I think most of them will apply even though you don't live here.
Sure.
We'll see how we go. So what are your top 3 Vietnamese foods?
Oh, well, Nick Ross, I don't know if you had a chance to meet Nick Ross.
I've communicated with him, but
just one of my favorite. Listening to him speak Vietnamese, because he lived here for 16 years, and he is, he's one of the best English-speaking, Vietnamese-speaking people in the country. Like, he's great. He's back in England now, but he would take us for lunches and stuff. So wherever Nick Ross took us would have been, and I'll put up a list of the places. If people want to message me for the names of the places, I will send them to them because I have them. The local food, so one of them is right next to Heart of Darkness. There's this outdoor, and it's like a barbecue type, like they bring you the little hot pots and you cook all your own stuff on it. Unbelievable. And so and I think the other one was called Nam Giao, Namgiao, and that was the lunch place that Nick took us to all the time, and it was oh man, this is some of the best food I've ever had in my life, ever.
And do you know the names of any of the dishes?
No, goodness. He ordered. I didn't even say a word the entire time. He just ordered it. We had to unwrap a lot of them, like they were in the leaf, in the like palm leaf or banana leaf or whatever it is. And so, and then I went. Lately, there's a little. I'm pointing on the podcast. Right out in front of the hotel, there's this little banh mi, and so when I went and had one yesterday, little Vietnamese sub, and I gave her. I thought she said 50,000, which would be, would be like $3 or $4 Canadian. So when I gave her the 50,000, she gave me change, and it was 15. So it was 80 cents, 85 cents for a little Vietnamese sub. It was great, and so I went and bought 2 today, and like $1.60, $1.70 for it. So it's like that cheap.
Blows your mind, right?
Yeah.
Because you'd happily pay 50.
Yeah, easily. That's fine. Like $3, $4. Yeah, that's great. Oh no, it's 85 cents. Oh, okay, no, that's good too.
And so I don't know how much you get to go out drinking when you come visit. What's your favorite bar and your favorite beer in Vietnam?
I do like Tiger. I've always been like a Pilsner-y type, So I like when I drink beer in Canada or the US, it's always something very light, like a lager or a Pilsner. So I'm always just fine with that.
So people can't see my reaction. I'm cringing right now, and I talk a lot about. I'm a craft beer fanatic, and Saigon craft beer scene has like exploded in the last just kind of 3 years. Yeah. So we often talk about craft beer a lot, and I often joke if someone gives the answer of Tiger, the podcast's over, and we're not going to talk.
I dig with that,
but it's all right. I'll forgive you since you.
Well, sure. So I don't like hops.
Right.
I really don't like a hoppy beer. I was doing a really fun comedy festival in Portland. It's called the Bridgetown Comedy Festival, and the name of the beer was IPA, right? So we got all the free IPA we wanted for an entire week, and I bought my own beer. I would rather pay for my own beer than drink an IPA. I detest hops.
Everyone's got their own personal preferences. I'm just being a dick.
No, it's great. And so I've had a lot of the Heart of Darkness beers, and there's some great ones there. Like they have a couple of nice Pilsners that are great. But as soon as there's hops in it, man, I'm out. Like I really. So, what is it we drink in Thailand? They have like something that would be like
Chang.
Yeah. And then I like it. I just like a nice light beer.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. Fair enough, that's fine as well. Right now I'm drinking, you would have liked this I think, at Pasteur Street they have a watermelon mint lager. It's so good.
Yeah, that's right. And does the melon help with your yeast infection?
Shh, you said you wouldn't tell anyone about that. I told you that in private. And so one of the questions I normally ask is a favourite daytime place to drink or hang out in Saigon. Do you have one of those?
No, but I don't day drink.
No?
No, because I have shows almost every night.
Yeah,
and I don't drink before shows. So there's been a few times, like yesterday, I was out having lunch, and I'm like, man, a beer would be great, because it's so hot, and it would be so great to have a beer. But I find it makes me a little sleepy if I have day beers. And so then I don't want to be, half drunk and then sobering up, or a little hungover come showtime. So I hardly ever drink during the day. And but as far as a favorite place to hang out, and this is going to sound cheesy, lunch with Nick Ross. That was the thing I was looking forward to most. I was so excited to come back and go for food with him, because I just am so. I just love listening to him communicate, and how excited, and he makes people laugh all the time, and then the dishes show up and they're just out of this world. And so I really, my memories of Vietnam, my first 2 years, was being taken around by a guy who's lived here for 16 years and just ordering the best food I've ever had in my life. So anywhere with Nick Ross.
There you go. That's good enough. Is there anything, I ask people, what one thing would you change about Saigon? Is there anything about Saigon you would change?
Yeah, how about like pedway overpasses for pedestrians? They could just build a little thing, you could go over top of it.
Seems like such a simple idea.
Yeah, and if you were to try and, like, let's say, and God forbid, but let's say you were suicidal and you wanted to step out in front of traffic to kill yourself, you couldn't even do it. They would have bullied.
Have you used that joke? That's a great joke. You should use that the next time. I won't steal that, I promise.
It's all yours. I on your podcast, I will say that I will not be able to use that joke. I have never used that joke. And you can use it because I can't. It won't travel. It simply won't travel.
That's very true.
Yeah, and so if and when that joke gets laughs for you, you can just say, "Oh yeah, Lars and I wrote it over a podcast, and he said I could have it." So
sounds good. I'll test it out the next time I go. Next time I perform. What would you think is what's the most misunderstood thing about Saigon?
Well, having been to just 3 cities in Vietnam, Hanoi, Hue, and Ho Chi Minh. I think that people might not realize how industrialized it is. It's relatively easy to navigate. So they don't have Uber, they have Grab. And even though I haven't really been able to communicate much with the drivers, so they've never not taken me to where I was going. And then genuinely, and this is the massages in Bali, in Thailand, and in Vietnam, you can get a really high quality hour-long massage for $8 Canadian, $8.50 Canadian, which is like $6.50, $7 US. And good, not hanky-panky, not, just actual quality massages. And so I think people will be surprised at how easy it was to get around, and especially a city this size.
Yeah, it's massive, right?
Yeah.
And you can get a massage without a hanky-panky.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe misunderstood. People think you say massage and they're like, oh, and you're like, no.
Real.
It's a massage.
Yeah, real one, yeah. Like a quality, a massage therapist in the UK or Canada, or, it's their quality massages, they really are.
And normally I like to ask people what's their favourite place in Vietnam outside of Saigon, but you've only got 2 other places, right?
Thailand? No. No, it's I really Ho Chi Minh is my just because after 4 years I'm starting to feel a little bit more familiar, the districts and kind of knowing where things are in relation to one another, and I've really it's because you come once a year. You know what to look forward to. You know a few places to go, and if you're familiar with the comedians, you meet them and you come back, like Angie and Ben and everybody. When you come back, Caleb, you come back, and I'm so excited to see them. They're funny people and they're friends. So I'm always like, yay, let's hang out, and it's great.
That's awesome. And my last question is, what advice would you give to someone who's thinking of visiting Vietnam?
Oh, you have to do it. Oh my goodness, you will be so glad you did. So many beautiful things to see, so much history. The food is so cheap and is so great. The people are nice. And I have a terrible sense of direction. If I can navigate around, anybody can. And so, when people are like, I was thinking about going to Vietnam, 100%. I would say absolutely, put it on your list of places you should see at least once in your lifetime. I think it's amazing. I really love it.
Awesome. I agree completely. I think anyone you speak to that comes here, they just fall in love with it once they get here.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly why sometimes. There's lots of reasons, but
Yeah.
definitely an
It's
awesome
wonderful.
place. So you're flying back tonight to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
What's next for you once you get back?
I have a corporate show, so I do a lot of corporate work, and so I have a corporate show as soon as I get back, and then I'll be in New York for 2 months. So all of June and July, I'll be in New York City, and then maybe Edinburgh. I think I might be doing the Fringe Festival for the first half.
Yeah.
And then I run a comedy festival in the Okanagan, which is near Vancouver, about 3 hours from Vancouver. At the end of August, I run that, and Okanagan Comedy Festival is what it's called. And then basically just start the tours all over again.
Nice.
Yeah.
Excellent. You keep them busy then?
Yeah, it's been a busy 15 years.
Well, awesome. Lars, thank you so much. This has been really fun. You've given massive help to the comics in Saigon over the last couple of days. It's been awesome to meet you, and thank you for coming on 7 Million Bikes, a Saigon podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hột gà nướng, hột vịt lộn, hột vịt sữa, trứng cút
Thanks
lộn,
again to Lars
bắp
Callieou
xào
for joining me on the bonus episode of 7 Million Bikes, the Saigon podcast. You can check him out on Instagram or Twitter. It's Extra Lars, EXTRALARS. And he says if you follow him on Instagram, he'll follow you right back, so you've got an extra follower. Thanks again for listening in. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Lars had a great time here in Saigon. He's a very funny man, and he gave loads of tips to the local comedians, which will hopefully improve the scene here. And if you live here, you'll hopefully see some funnier comics, yours truly included. So thanks again for listening. I hope you enjoyed that, and hopefully you can tune in for future episodes. Cheers. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're like me, you may use your laptop at places where you have to use public Wi-Fi. This opens you up to digital snoopers. It's a massive problem. It can be your internet service provider, or you know who, looking at what you do online, or a cyber criminal trying to steal your bank passwords or credit card info, or even a hacker at the next table trying to steal your sensitive data. These days, it is vital that you keep your data safe. NordVPN keeps all of these snoopers away. It makes your internet activity private, protects you from accessing dangerous websites that are phishing for your data, and lets you enjoy your favorite content securely, even while away from home. And it's easy to use, even I could use it. I've actually been using NordVPN for years now here in Vietnam, and I'm excited to be an affiliate partner with them. I've used NordVPN to watch Netflix, BBC, Disney Plus with ease, and I also know that my information and data are safe from prying eyes, whoever they may be. Join now and you'll get 68% off and 3 months free when you go to my link, nordvpn.com/SMB. Just again, for those hard of hearing, nordvpn.com/SMB. The link is also in the show notes. I know nobody checks them out, but go check that out and you can get the link from wherever you are listening to this podcast. As an affiliate partner, it also means that I will get a small commission when you sign up, but at no extra cost to you. So not only will you be getting a great deal through 7 Million Bikes, you get a great VPN and you'll be supporting 7 Million Bikes podcast. Stay safe online and enjoy the shows you love. Any questions, just let me know. You know how to get in touch with me. And thanks for listening to this show. Cheers.